Okay, I think I'm probably live. I don't know whether there's going to be any bumpers, but I'm going to wait until the top of the hour just in case. Um, we'll see how it goes. I've got a very loosely planned, non-comprehensive show structure, which is basically relaying a conversation I've been having on one of the Reiki chat groups on Facebook. Well, I'll get into that at the top of the hour, and we'll see where it goes from there. And if anybody wants to jump in, you're welcome to jump in, and I'll bring you into the conversation if you've got any comments or what I'm saying, or anything you want to add about Reiki or hypnosis or telepathy or that sort of thing. That's the basis of the show today, really. I'll see what I can find on YouTube halfway through or quarter way through just to promote a bit of discussion and get my thought process going, and then we'll see where we go from there. All right, so it looks like there's no bumpers. I'll just get cracking with this. It's pretty close to that's just turned 4 o'clock exactly in my time, according to my laptop, which means it's 11 a.m. in the States, and that means you're listening to Free Association. Let me just let the chat room know that I'm on air. It's going to be loose, this one. And it might just end up being a conversation with the chat room, depending on how I feel. Because there's a few people in there at the moment. I don't know who's listening to what, but I'm here if anybody wants to tune in. If anybody's hearing me, let me know you're hearing me in the chat room if you've got me on, and then I'll get started. Let me just double check. Because we've got some technical issues at the moment. We're working from the old studio, so I just need to keep double checking things are happening properly. And I'm going to share my. Okay, good. I'm going to share my screen and just play a little bit of just 4 minutes of a hypnosis video that I was just watching called Hypnosis and Hypnotizability. This one. So share screen first.
How do we and can we use hypnosis to treat serious problems in medicine? What is it? Hypnosis is a state of aroused, attentive focal concentration.
Right, let me do that again.
With diminished peripheral awareness. How many of you have been hypnotized? How do we and can we use hypnosis to treat serious problems in medicine? What is it? Hypnosis is a state of aroused, attentive focal concentration with diminished peripheral awareness. How many of you have been hypnotized? Any of you had experience? There are a few who have. So you know you don't go to sleep, despite the common root in Greek, hypnos for hypnotic. We use it for sleeping pills. But hypnosis is not sleep. It's a narrowing of the focus of attention. It's something like getting so caught up in a good movie that you forget you're watching a movie. You enter the imagined world. Hypnosis is to consciousness what a telephoto lens is to a camera. What you see with great detail, but you're less aware of the context. And I'll try and show you what we think is some of the neurophysiology underlying that. In conjunction with this absorption, you have dissociation. So you put outside of conscious awareness things that would ordinarily be in consciousness. Right now, we all do it all the time. You're having sensations in these wonderful chairs the government has provided. Hopefully those sensations were not foremost in your mind until I brought it to your attention. If it was, you can leave now. But in the service of focusing our attention, we put outside or of conscious awareness things we would ordinarily be aware of. We call that dissociation. The third element, and the one that scares people the most, is suggestibility. The idea that you can make somebody into a robot and make them do anything you want. It isn't true, but what is true is that people in hypnosis are less likely to critically judge what you say to them. You've got to be careful about what you say because they're less likely to correct your mistakes. I think it makes people nervous because we are all social creatures. We all respond to social cues, and sometimes we do so irrationally. And so hypnosis is kind of a limiting case example of how much we can allow input from other people, even people we don't know very well, control our behavior. We've all had it seemed like a good idea at the time moment in our lives, I'm sure. Hypnosis is one of those situations where you're more likely to do that, and I'll show you some of the underlying neurophysiology perhaps related to that. We also use hypnotic-like states in other normal activities. If you are hypnotizable, you will be using that ability in a variety of ways. So this was from the Times about the Sochi Winter Olympics. The snow was actually very bad, and so they were not allowed to make many practice runs on the actual courses. So what they would do is stand there and intensely visualize going through the courses. And they say you have to smell it. Emily Cook said, she was a freestyle Olympian. It's beyond visualization. You have to hear it. You have to feel it, everything. And Bode Miller practiced mentally going down the hill, and they found that it really helped them control what their body did by going through mentally what that experience was. Our brains are built to do that, and this, from my point of view, is a state of self-hypnosis. Sometimes eyes closed, sometimes eyes open, but I'm always kind of zoned out, said another Olympian. So that's what people do naturally when they want to enhance performance, and there are good clinical applications of that as well. The next major concept, and something that differentiates hypnosis from other mind-body techniques, is that hypnotizability is a stable trait. Now, it changes in the lifespan. So most 8-year-olds are in trances most of the time, as you know, if you call your kids in for dinner and they're out playing and they don't hear you. But by the time we go through adolescence and start what are called formal operations mentally, we tend to settle into a very stable degree of hypnotic responsiveness. About a third of the adult population just isn't hypnotizable. The rest somewhat, about 10 to 15%, very hypnotizable. And the test-retest correlation in a study done at Stanford some years ago was 0.7 over a 25-year interval, blindly retesting hypnotizability. Now, IQ isn't that stable over a 25-year interval. So it becomes an amazingly stable trait. And I want to show you something about the brain biology of the stability of hypnotizability. So this is just one distribution of scores, a little cluster at the lower end, about 2/3 of the population, at least somewhat measurably hypnotizable.
All right, so that's a bit technical, but it gives you the idea of the statistics. Roughly speaking, 2/3 of the population are hypnotizable. Now, I mention this mainly because I've been having a conversation on the Reiki groups on Facebook about hypnosis and Reiki, because my Reiki practice has become much more about hypnosis for me, and that's part of my development process. It's part of my healing process, if you like, because I always ask questions. I question what I've been told. I question why I've been told it. I question what I gain by believing it. I question all sorts of things about lots of different aspects of my life. That doesn't mean that I don't believe things. It just means that I've got an ability to question and look at things from a slightly more impersonal point of view, some of the time, not all of the time. And I was trained in Reiki by a guy called Neil Beechwood about 22 years ago, over the course of, well, initially over the course of a weekend in April, and then a weekend in September, and then another 4 days the following January. So over about 9 months, there was what, 2, 4, and then another 4. So 8 days of contact time with Neil Townsend in a group initially. Then the second one, I went down to Cornwall to a place called St Nectan's Glen, which is on the north coast of Cornwall and is allegedly one of the most haunted valleys in the country. It's a narrow valley with a river running through it. So the second, for people who don't know, Reiki's passed on by an initiation process, which is basically the guy doing the teaching, the Reiki master, putting symbols into your energy field. So talking me through a meditation, and then doing a little bit of a ritual, a ceremony, which involves drawing symbols on over the top of my head and in my palms of my hands, that sort of thing. That's how it's passed on. That's the tradition. So then you've got to ask yourself, what's happening with that? Why is it passed on in that way? Is it a transmission of consciousness? Is it a transmission of belief system, of skills? Is it the way it's phrased is a connection to universal energy? But aren't I already connected to universal energy? Wouldn't I not exist if I wasn't connected to universal energy? So what's going on there? Who knows what's going on there, really? But it's a good question. So I kind of ask these questions. Sometimes I just accept the answers that I'm given because it's too much like hard work to go through the analysis. But sometimes I question the things that I'm told. So the initiation at the beginning of the process was in April, as I said, at an alternative health centre, which was at the end of my street in London, which is why I chose it, because it was literally about a 2-minute walk away from my house. And Neil was doing a class. I'd already been involved in some meditation classes there and a little bit of Qigong, so I was reasonably happy that the teaching would be okay. I didn't understand anything about traditional Reiki at the time. All I knew was in some kind of healing modality. So I didn't know that Usui Reiki was the traditional way of doing things, and that every other way is an additional thing to that. I just went for the nearest class, really. So it turned out that what Neil Townsend was doing was a thing called Turamai. The Turamai system of natural healing is the way that they bill it, that they describe it. So it's a system that was put together by Kathleen Milner, who's an artist and psychic who lives in Phoenix, Arizona, I think now. She was living somewhere else 20 odd years ago when I was doing the training, but she's still got a website, and I think the Turamai system is still active. So the Turamai system is an additional thing to traditional Reiki. It's got some extra bells and whistles to it. So traditional Reiki is Japanese. Turamai has got another element to it, which is a thing called Seikim, which is Egyptian energy, and which has different qualities to it. It's described as a combination of earth, water, air, and fire when you put Reiki and Seikim together, with Reiki being the earth element. So it's got a shamanic feel to it. It's also got a kind of strange, creative, imaginative feel to it, because the way it's taught, I was taught psychic surgery at level 1, which is not in the way that, very much not the way that the traditional Reiki is taught. There isn't any psychic surgery in Reiki level 1 in Yusui, as far as I'm aware. So I was taught in the way that Taramai teaches, and I took it on board and I accepted it. I was told to do self-treatments every day, so I did, and I'm very pleased I did. I didn't get any kind of feeling in my hands or any kind of feedback really from the energy for the full 9 months. It took until the following January for the Reiki Master initiation before I started getting feeling in my hands. But I'd been doing daily Reiki self-treatments the way I was taught for the whole 9 months. So something was happening even if I couldn't feel it. And I know that. But it's easier if you can feel something happening. Much easier if you've got some kind of feedback mechanism going on. So anyway, that's the beginning of it. So the way it's described is it's a connection to universal energy. It's a healing system. So it's a process of integration, of becoming whole, of realizing your own wholeness, or whatever words you want to use. The words are quite important, because if I'm taking things literally and they're described in a way that's not accurate, then I'm taking something literally that isn't accurate. So I need to know what the description is and whether it's accurate really. These days I need to know before I do things, but at that point I was just accepting stuff. I was more likely to accept stuff. So from that point, the energy kind of takes over, and if you're doing Reiki treatments for yourself every day, then things come up in terms of imaginatively, in like visualizations come up, or feelings come up, or emotions come up, and then you just work on yourself and work through the emotion and try and work out what's going on. At that point, I was getting a lot of past life information through, or what I perceived as past life information. So some sense of quite regularly a sense of being burned at the stake, or a sense of being executed. So a lot of death trauma was coming up for me in the beginning. And admittedly, this is 22 years ago, so I don't have specifics, but I do remember being burnt at the stake a few times, and feeling like I was being persecuted for some reason. So there's a sense of being a heretic or being a non-conformist with me that goes back a long way. And I'm not sure, but I think Revolution Radio's got a certain amount of karmic affiliation, of kind of past life affiliation going on, which is probably why I've ended up here. Why that is, I'm not sure, but I'm working with non-conformists is something that I'm quite happy to do, even if they're different types of non-conformists to the one that I am. Still non-conformism. It's still asking questions. It's still questioning authority. So the principle's the same as far as I'm concerned. All right, so moving on, I skipped 20 years, and what I was doing is most of the time working informally with people. I did spend a few years doing Reiki as a professional thing, from a health food shop with a room upstairs that I was renting, and at that point I was advertising and getting regular clients. And because I was advertising in Yellow Pages, I got invited onto TV a couple of times. And I used to do clairvoyant readings and mediumship readings and that sort of thing as well. I trained in those sorts of things as well over the years, tarot readings. So it all kind of comes together in that kind of way. But if we skip 20 years, so most recently I've been doing Reiki sessions at work when I was working in the call centre, for people who might have headaches or migraines or what else was it? Ankle problems, swollen ankles, knee problems or knee pain, that sort of thing. Just things that are just like disabling, but not completely disabling. Just things that are there with people when you're working in a call center that come up, and when they know you're a healer, they'll give you a nod and ask you to come over and do a bit of work here and there. And I had to do it on my tea break, so it had to be short, had to be snappy to get the job done. I only had 10 minutes basically. So what I was doing in that situation was putting my hands on people's shoulders rather than going through hand positions and being formal about it. You can't really do that in 10 minutes. So hands on shoulders, just talking people through a little bit of a relaxation and then letting the energy flow. And all I was really doing was just checking in with where they said they had the pain or the discomfort to see what was happening, and then feeling it in my body to see if anything was changing. So that at that point, Reiki becomes a form of hypnosis because you're talking people into a relaxed state of mind to make things more effective. So then I started to think about, is Reiki a form of hypnosis? And my conclusion is probably, but I can't really prove it. But certainly that 2 days that I spent in the meeting room with Neil Townsend, if you put it all together, it's a form of passing on belief systems. It's a form of passing on belief in a particular skill, which is a kind of hypnotic process. So I'm quite happy with that. I don't have any issues with that because I know it works anyway. So I don't mind how if it's described as hypnosis and that's more accurate, I'm fine with it. And I think it's probably easier to explain it to people as a form of hypnosis anyway. So I'm going to start doing that and see what kind of response I get. The Reiki forums don't like it though. The people in the Reiki forums are very traditional. They believe what they were told. Some of them, most of them in fact, believe what they were told and don't ask that many questions. The responses tend to be short and sharp. And if you ask a yes or no question, you're going to get a yes or no answer in those types of forums. But the last one I asked was about questioning the initiation process and questioning what people were being told, and that's had a more positive response than the previous one. So I'm gonna keep posting and see if I can formulate the questions in a way that produces a conversation and produces a questioning process in there. Because I think that'll be valuable for the community. There's 11,000 people in there, and if all they're doing is accepting what they're told without thinking about it and without questioning it, then they're not doing themselves any favors. And I've been through that process, so I can kind of lead people through that process and see if people will come with me. Some people might come with me a little bit if they're already doing the questioning anyway, but it might inspire one or two people to ask questions, and that's kind of the idea of what I'm doing there. So I don't know, if 11,000 people who don't normally ask questions start asking questions, then I think that's probably a victory, and it's a good way of producing a healing process. So we'll see how that goes anyway. I think I don't want to work one-to-one with 11,000 people in sequence. So working with 11,000 people in a group is probably all right. It's a quick way of doing stuff with people who are ready. and it's something that's good for me because it's good practice in formulating questions and leading a group through a process. I don't know exactly what the process is going to be because I've only just started it, but it'll certainly be kind of installing questions for people to think about, helping people to approach questions in a particular way, maybe, and just sharing my responses and seeing how often things come up in the forum, and then I'll formulate questions based on that. So that's my connection with Reiki and hypnosis. And the other thing that I was asking about when I was asking, is Reiki a form of hypnosis in this group, was because within the process I was going through in the call center, I found it fairly easy to add particular thoughts to the energy as it was flowing, and that's a form of telepathic hypnosis, for want of a better way to phrase it. I know this is all a bit left field, but adding a quality to universal energy, maybe the quality of joy or the quality of peace or the quality of harmony, as a suggestion, as a silent internal suggestion, while I'm in the energy process, while I'm channeling energy for the person I'm working with, who in effect is my client at the time. So I found that interesting. I've had other telepathic experiences. I did a show about telepathy in the bath last year, and yeah, I find the idea of telepathy and Reiki and hypnosis as a combination interesting. So I'm going to develop that, I think, this year, and see where that takes me. Right, let's see. There's another hypnosis video on here that's about 10 minutes long. Let's see what we can do with that. So the overlap between hypnosis and energy healing is what I'm talking about, really. So let me see if I can find an example. Right, the first video that comes up is hypnosis for an energy boost. So let me put that. I'll set that away, and we'll see how it is. I don't want to start it and then stop it again halfway through, but I might, because I'm just using it as an example. So simply because I know how my Reiki sessions work, we'll see how similar this is. I haven't listened to this before, but we'll see. This is Hypnosis Energy Boost, and it's on Elaine Martin's channel on YouTube.
Hi, this is Elaine Martin. So make sure you're in a comfortable position where you will not be disturbed and your back is straight. Listening with stereo earphones will enhance the experience. And also please make sure you're not listening whilst driving a car. So if you need to get organized, then pause here and restart when you are ready. Now take a couple of nice, easy, deep, cleansing breaths in and out. Noticing the flow of your breath. Now gently allow your eyelids to close. Now with your eyes closed, roll your eyes up as if you are looking at the center of your forehead. Now with your eyes fixed in this position, you may be interested to know that this helps you to enter a slower brainwave state, a state called theta, where your level of suggestibility is heightened. So just keep focusing on that spot at the center of your forehead.
All right, I'm not going to play the full 15 minutes of that, but I didn't actually know that, so I'll test that at some point about looking up towards your third eye produces a state of susceptibility. So that's something that I need to test. I'm not going to take anybody's word for it. But personal experience is an interesting thing because it doesn't prove anything, but it'll prove something to me personally. It can't prove anything to my experience, can't prove anything to anybody else. But I can prove it to myself, whatever it is that I'm testing. And I tend to, even though I don't consciously all the time do experiments, I do experiments, but they're just not conscious. So I'm testing things all the time to see how accurate they are, to see how personally comfortable I am with certain ideas. One of the things I do in philosophy groups is I try the ideas on for size, like they're a set of clothes, to see how I feel about the world when I'm wearing a different set of ideas. And it's a process that equates, roughly speaking, to something called deep trance identification, which is a hypnotic process. So again, things that I've been doing naturally, things that I've been doing in Reiki groups turn out to be hypnotic processes. And I didn't know they were. I was just doing them because they made sense to me to do to understand the ideas. So it seems like I'm a natural hypnotist in some ways, which I've just discovered. But now that I know that, I can use it to help my Reiki clients. And I've always suggested to people that they try on ideas for size. And a few people do that in the groups, but not many. I think some people are ready for things and some people aren't. And you can't force people into doing particular things. So it's just offered as a possibility, offered as a method, if you like, for want of a better phrase. And some people take it up, some people don't. But it's interesting to see who does and who doesn't. It's very interesting to see who's open to that type of thing and who isn't. Right, I do have a guy that I listen to on a regular basis called David Snyder, and I'm going to just play a little bit of one of his videos. He gives a lot of techniques, and he says a lot of things. The videos are often 3 or 4 hours long. I'm just going to play this from where I left off. So I don't know what he's going to say, but it'll be something similar to. It'll be something that's useful from my point of view. So it's good to share that. So this is David Snyder, who's an acupuncturist and hypnotherapist based, I think, in San Diego or somewhere like that in California.
Another place we might see it is here.
All right, now I picked a face reading video, which probably isn't going to translate well to the radio, so let's try something else. I've just got to pick the right spot on these.
Hello, this is David Snyder. Welcome to Secrets of Human Influence. I'm your host, David Snyder. Ask you to interact with me. I'm going to ask you to do certain things because I treat my webinars.
I'm just going to skip through this till I find a good bit.
So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So how many of you are first timers? I'm just looking real quick. Okay, cool. New ranking of my NLP development program.
Oh, that's just
and it says,
more
Dear
stuff.
David, it is
Through that.
Having them feel ridiculously good about it. It's also going to empower you in the sense that you're going to be able to detect when other people are trying to do these things to you in a way that is not in your highest interest. Is that useful? If you think that's useful, type in the chat, please. Okay. That being said, let's go back to the David Dog and Pony Show, and we'll jump in. Hold on a second. I gotta get used to it. My chat bars keep jumping around, so I'm like, okay. So pattern recognition. So this class is for you. See if any, and again, as I list these things off.
Telling the benefits of the class, so I'll skip that.
Get out of the class. One of the things that I've learned the hard way. Let me go back to not sharing my screen. One of the things that I learned the hard way is that if you go to somebody's class and the drills aren't easy, if it's a cumbersome to use technique, if it's not fun for you, you probably won't use it out in the street. You understand that? When we start looking at human influence is one of the few places where a little bit of information applied the right way yields tremendous benefits. Okay? And so it's not in this webinar, I'm going to deliver on everything I shared with you today. Each and every technique that I share with you can satisfy each of those 4 areas that we talked about. There is a full system from which these pieces are derived, and we'll talk about how you can learn the whole system later on. But right now, we want to start with one of the most powerful and useful techniques that is out there. We call this the echo technique. And here's, I hope you brought something to take notes. I really did. Okay. First thing to understand, I want to teach you the secret back door to the human nervous system. In other words, if you use this one technique, you will literally generate increased rapport, a desire to communicate, and increased understanding and attention from that person. Would that be useful to be able to just walk up to anybody and just instantly have their complete attention focused on you and hanging on your every word? Would that be useful? Okay. So here it is. Here's the very first technique, and the reason I'm teaching it first is A, it's the simplest, it's the most ethical, it's the most in line with how the neurology is designed to interpret and analyze and respond to language. And it literally forces a person to A, pay attention to you in spite of everything else that's going on, B, to feel like you really get them and understand them so they fall deeper into rapport and connect with you deeply, and it causes them to want to talk more so you don't have to. How many people here hate small talk? Just type that if you're one of those people that just hates small talk. Okay, if you're the kind of person who hates small talk, this is going to be the most powerful thing you can learn. This saves my ass on a regular basis. Okay, and I truly mean it. It saves my ass on a regular basis. But when you do it, it automatically causes people to want to just run off at the mouth. And the best part about it is.
All right, I'm gonna just describe the technique because he rambles on for hours, this guy, and you can't pick out a place on the video where he's giving the actual technique. He doesn't label anything. So echo technique it's a conversational hypnosis technique. What he's basically saying is use the person you're speaking to's own language when you're speaking back to them. Give them back their own language so that they understand what you're saying, and it builds a deeper connection. So if you want to I work in telesales, so I kind of do this anyway, but not as much as he's, not in quite the same kind of level as he's doing on the hypnosis side. So the idea is to repeat somebody's words back to them about 70 or 80% of the time, and then ask questions. And that way you'll build a sense of recognition and acknowledgement and acceptance between the two people. It feels like you're being accepted if somebody uses your own language when they're speaking to you, and it's there's no resistance to your own language. That's why he's suggesting to use echo technique, to echo people's words back to them, as there's no resistance to your own words. So again, when I'm working with people in Reiki, there's less speaking involved in Reiki than there is in hypnosis, but the way that I do it, it's a seated session, and there's a conversation before. Like in a half an hour session, I would do maybe 10 minutes conversation, and then a 10-minute Reiki session, and then another 10 minutes of conversation. So what I've been doing with clients over the last, that's at least 2 years I've been working like that. What I've been doing is starting to build in conversational hypnosis without knowing that I was doing it. It's finding out what's the issue that's top of mind for the person that you're working with, and then kind of filtering out all the stuff that's not needed, and just working with the issue that they've brought to the table. And I found that to be very effective, but it's not the way the traditional Reiki is done. So this is my version of it. I'm going to call it something else eventually, but at the moment it's a combination of conversation and Reiki together. But it's less emphasis on the energy side of things and more emphasis on the conversational side. So it's all just changes in the way that I work. I generally speaking, I change the way I work every 6 months anyway, because something comes up that I'm interested in, and I'll incorporate that into my Reiki sessions if I find that it works for me, at least. So anything that works for me, I include in what I do with my clients. So what that means is emotional freedom technique, I get good results for myself. Sedona method, although I'm not trained in it, if I just do what they ask me to do and follow the videos, I get good results. And I've started to incorporate Sedona method into my Reiki when I've been working with guys who were in the Iraq War. There's one guy I know who was having flashbacks to the Iraq War, and I think he was in Kosovo as well. He was in Yugoslavia and having flashbacks there. So I did a Reiki session with him in a bar, in a gay bar around the corner from me. I met him in one place, and we moved on to a quieter bar, and then we sat in a booth, and I just talked him through letting go some of his trauma. And he was quite happy. He's a straight guy, but he was quite happy to be in a gay bar, because his brother's gay. So we're sat there with a beer. He's got his hands on my forearm, each hand, so that I can feel what his grip's like, so I can feel how relaxed he is, and feel what's coming up. So Sedona method, I came across about 3 years ago now, and it's a letting go technique. It's a very easy technique, very, very easy technique, and you can. There's quite a lot of videos on YouTube. And I know one of their workshops is on YouTube as an 8-part course, so it's worth looking at if you've got any letting go to do. what Sedona method is it's an assumption that you can let go of trauma or whatever the thing is that you've been holding on to, and then a questioning process. So you would ask the question, could I let go of this? Would I let go of this? And when would I let go of this? So the first question, could I, is just the assumption that you can. So the answer is going to be yes or no. But if you're doing Sedona method, it's more than likely going to be yes, because you've already made the assumption that you can just by doing the method. Would I is a choice about whether you let go or not. And when, the answer is either going to be here and now, or it's going to be tomorrow, or it's going to be whenever. But the obvious answer is here and now. So that's the process, basically. It's an assumption, then a choice, and then do it now. And I found it to be very, very useful for the process that I was going through about 2 or 3 years ago. And it's good for informal situations. If you're having a cup of coffee with somebody and an emotional issue comes up, you can just verbally talk people through it. Or what I do if it's something that's a bit heavier, I'll just get people to hold my arm. Yeah, absolutely, Mitzi. Mitzi's in the chat room asking questions, so I'm just responding to that. New habits, new feelings. You can't have something new without having a space. So to have a space, you have to let go of something. And that's the principle. It's very simple. All of the stuff that I do is very, very simple. And it's just a series of assumptions that I've made over the years, or I've borrowed from different places. You have to assume that if you're going through a personal development process, you have to assume that wherever you're going is going to be positive for you, whether it looks like it or not. Because I've been led into some very strange situations by my intuition, and if I didn't assume that there was going to be something positive there, I would never have gone there. So yeah, so that's the assumption that everything is going to be positive in some way or another, or will have a learning within it, or a resource within it, is one of the assumptions that I make. The assumption that I can let go of the old stuff has to be there for me. That wasn't there for quite a long time, and I got so far, but then I got stuck, and I had to find a way to work around the stuckness. I had to put in the assumption about letting go. And I got that from Sedona method, but it's also an emotional freedom technique as well. And it's not really in Reiki, the letting go part. But if you do any kind of healing work with Reiki, it's not stated, but there has to be an assumption that there's an emotional release going to happen. That's usually, everybody's always told to keep a box of tissues handy. So there is an assumption that there will be an emotional release at some point, either during or after a Reiki session. And that's the equivalent of letting go. It's letting go of the emotion, letting it out from wherever it's been trapped in your body or your energy field. Right, I'm just going to have a drink now because my throat's starting to dry up. Give me 2 seconds. And I'll do the station promo while I'm doing that. So Revolution Radio is listener supported, and we do need your donations. There's some tech issues to sort out. So if you can spare $10 or $15, here and now or on a monthly basis, then we would appreciate it. There's 2 studios, both running one running programs 24 hours a day, the other one running programs most of the day, and nearly 100 hosts, and everybody's a volunteer. So if you can, then just have a look at revolution.radio, and on the top of the page you'll find a nav bar with the schedule, the archives, the store. There's a link there for donations as well, for one-off donations, and there's also a link to become a patron at the top of the page. So that's for monthly donations, but if you can spare it every month for a few months, it'll go to a good cause. Rev Radio is a good cause. Keeps the stations running and gives people a chance to express themselves, which is a form of healing. In my world, when people who haven't been able to express themselves in other places are given an opportunity to express themselves, that's a form of healing. So the whole place, as far as I can see, is a big healing process. It's a shadow integration process. It's bringing things to the surface that have been hidden. It's bringing personal issues to the surface that have been hidden in terms of interactions between hosts and what have you. So on a personal level, it's a healing process, a development process. On a social and political level, it's a healing process. And on a philosophical level, it's a healing process. People come into Rev Radio and maybe change their mind about some fundamental assumptions about the world. Or maybe start with one set of assumptions and move through into a different set. Which might be an unsticking process that's going on. I don't know, that's the way that I look at it. But that's the way I look at most of the world. So that's just me, really. I'm not going to carry on forever today because my throat is starting to dry up. So I'm going to wrap it up at that point, I think. And I'm going to drop out a little bit early and let whoever's coming on get their tech stuff set up, because I'll need a couple of minutes to set things up. So I'm here. Excuse me. I'm here every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Most of my attention on the web is going into shadowplay.live at the moment. But you can also find me on Twitter, where I'm Dennis Barker. That's more or less the places that you can find me. Radioprojects.co.uk is a radio station I set up a couple of years ago that has some content I borrowed from YouTube on it. There's not very much of me on there at the moment, but there will be at some point. So I'm gonna let it go at this point and let whoever's coming on next set up properly. So I'll see you next week, and thanks for listening, and good luck.